We're rapidly approaching 1,000 miles here with the Volkswagen Tiguan. In fact, it was right around 930 miles where I got that check engine light and limp mode. So I think so far we're doing pretty good here with the second Tiguan. With all the information that is out there right now for the Volkswagen Tiguan, the SEL R-Line Turbo, the dozens of owners who are complaining about faulty turbos, I figured why not make a video about the facts, what we know, what we don't know, what trims are affected, and more importantly, I want this video to be a central location for this. Can we pinpoint exactly what model runs or production runs are affected? My first Volkswagen Tiguan, I had to do a deep dive, I had to do some searches on Google. My first Tiguan was built in October. The build date was 10/25. The second Volkswagen Tiguan is 12/25. If something happens to this Tiguan, it will be the first publicly known 12/25 or December-made Tiguan that would have a turbo issue. Up to this point, we only know that October and November are affected. So maybe for those of you who are buying these right now that are built in December, January, once we get later on into the year, February, March, and April, you might be fine. But until we know what those specifics are, it's all a guessing game right now. For those of you asking, I want to know what my build date is. How do I find out? Well, open the driver's side door, and there's a sticker down here. In the top right corner of this sticker is going to be that build date, 12/25. As you can tell, made in Mexico. Yep, unfortunately, our Tiguans are made in Mexico and not in Germany. To answer the first question for this episode of Tiguan Talks, does this affect all four trims? And it does not. Now you got to remember here, the S, SE, and SE R-Line Black have been made since May of 2025, not kind of production time leading up to the initial arrival of these vehicles. And what is one thing we're not noticing here? A consistency and frequency of turbo failures in the S, SE, and SE R-Line Black. That is not to say there will be an outlier here and there. That's not to say there's going to be people on Facebook, on Reddit, in this comment section saying, I own an SE and my crossover is down. But the lack of frequency just isn't there for me to say this is an indictment on the Tiguan as a whole. With the SEL R-Line Turbo, it first arrived at dealers in late October, with the turbo failures popping up in November. And then it really ramped up right around December and January. And when you take a look at Facebook, at Reddit, on YouTube, it's only SEL R-Line Turbo owners that are complaining, or Highline Turbo owners up in Canada. There's no one saying anything bad with their S, SE, and SE R-Line Black, which is why I am not going to sit here and tell you to go out and buy those three trims, but I do think it's a safer bet if you really do love the Volkswagen Tiguan. It is a fantastic product. It is a fantastic platform. I would push you in the SE R-Line Black direction if you really want this vehicle, but that is up to your decision making. I'm going to leave that up to you guys. I'm not telling you to buy this vehicle just based off of what I've experienced with the SEL R-Line Turbo. Now this leads me into the next thing that we know here with the Volkswagen Tiguan, and that is it's a turbo issue. This has nothing to do with the Gen 5 EA888. Volkswagen's been making this engine for 5 generations, spanning, what, almost 2 decades now? I think they know how to make an engine. The turbo is from a supplier, so Volkswagen isn't making those turbos. And it kind of makes sense that it's going to be an SEL R-Line Turbo issue, because with this model, you have different horsepower, you have different torque, you have different internals. So anything could go or anything could be uncompatible and something could easily pop up, right? It just so happens to be the turbo. Now, this isn't the first time Volkswagen has had to deal with this in the past. In fact, 10 years ago, Volkswagen with the Mark 7 GTI and the IS20 Turbo had similar problems where the turbo would go. And what were people complaining about leading up to that turbo failure? Oil consumption and bad fuel economy. Now, I can't speak about oil consumption with my Tiguan, my first Tiguan. Fuel economy was in the gutter. I could barely get to 20 miles per gallon. The second Tiguan so far is averaging close to 26 to 27. Maybe I have a good one here. Maybe Volkswagen or the turbo supplier had a better run for December. Who knows? But with that consistency and that frequency, because that's what's most important here, the fact that we're seeing all this happen for just one trim, I think it's safe to say we're seeing a repeat of what happened 10 years ago from Volkswagen. They got to figure out their turbo issues, but this isn't new from the brand. So should we be surprised? Probably not. Now also, with the Gen 5 EA 888, what else do we know about this engine? Well, the S, SE, and SE R-Line Black and the SEL Premium are fine. Also with Audi, the Q5, the A5, they use the Gen 5 EA 888. The new Audi Q3 uses the Gen 5 EA 888. Now, I have heard some issues with the Q5 and A5, but a lot of it seems to be technical. I've asked around, I've asked a few people that work at Audi, and they're just seeing tech issues. It's not pertaining to the turbo. So maybe they have a different supplier for Audi with those engines. Also, those engines are laid out a little bit differently in the A5 and Q5 compared to the Volkswagen Tiguan. I'm curious to see what happens with the Q3, but either way, it seems like the Gen 5 is perfectly fine. And I have confidence in Volkswagen because my GTI has the Gen 3 EA 888. My dad's All-Track has the Gen 3 EA 888, and there's no issues. It's mostly the turbo. So the turbo is going to be your main concern here with the early production run for the SEL R-Line Turbo. Now, unfortunately, this leads me into what we don't know about the Volkswagen Tiguan SEL R-Line Turbo. And what we don't know has me more concerned at the moment with this Volkswagen Tiguan being built 12/25. And that's going to be what build dates are affected. Now, my first Tiguan was made in October. It seems like a lot of October Tiguans are the ones that are affected with a faulty turbo. What would also help out too, and we'll have to wait and see. Again, everything is going to be near the end of the year. Volkswagen is not going to issue a recall this early in the production. They'll wait until the end of the year. They'll wait until, probably December to have a press release or something along those lines, where we're going to find out that Tiguans made from September to January are going to be under this blanketed recall, whether they're affected or not. But also, with that turbo issue back in 2016 with the IS-20, there were serial numbers and codes that you could find out which ones were going to be an issue, what production run was the problem. Right now, we don't have any of that. We have no data to give us any type of reassurance here. No one's been able to have a spreadsheet. No one's been able to pool all this data for the SEL R-Line Turbo owners that are experiencing this and what their build dates were. It's only up until very recently where people are being proactive, taking a look at that sticker and saying, all right, my Tiguan was made in 11/25 or 12/25. And from this day forward, we should be able to at least have some confidence and say, all right, the Volkswagen Tiguan was made in January, made in February, made in March. They're fine, but it's going to be Tiguans made in October, November, and who knows what other months are affected that you might want to steer clear of, and that if you are looking at buying this trim, you love it, and maybe this is 6 months down the road where all of this is being taken care of. If there is one on inventory, new or used, and you take a look at that sticker, you can say, all right, I'm going to back out. I'm not going to dive into this one. I'll either buy a brand new model that's going to be okay, or maybe take a look at one that was made in March, April, or maybe even January. But currently, right now, and this is why I personally believe every single Tiguan is affected or possibly affected, is because we don't have that pool of data. At best, you're looking at a Russian roulette situation where 10 to 20% of these models are affected. And do you want to play those odds? Do you want to play that game? That is up to you to decide. Currently, right now, almost 1,000 miles in with this Tiguan, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm kind of easing into my ownership here, but maybe this is just the calm before the storm. I have no idea. But that's the one unknown that does have me concerned. And the big unknown that I think a lot of us would like to see that addressed. For some of us to at least see that data and say, all right, I know which Tiguan is going to be affected, and that if I currently own an SEL R-Line Turbo that was made in December, I'm not going to have this issue, and there can be some ease at the end of the day here. But unfortunately, until we get to that point, this is all going to be up in the air. Now, in recent days, there has been a lot of unverified information from Highline Turbo owners up in Canada, telling us that there is a compensation package for Highline Turbo owners that are dealing with this issue, waiting for a turbo replacement, where Volkswagen is stepping in and paying their first month of ownership or their first month of their vehicle being out of commission. I'm also hearing an extended warranty. But I have seen nothing to suggest, and I haven't seen a number of people say this yet up in Canada, I have seen nothing that suggests that there's a stop sale or a buyback program. But what I have seen, though, is a number of owners up in Canada and here in the US where their dealerships are taking back their Volkswagen Tiguan SEL R-Line turbos and putting them into a new model, which leads me to believe that Volkswagen Corporate is involved in all of this, and they know exactly what build dates are affected. Maybe they are putting you into a vehicle that has a December build date. Maybe they're putting you in a Tiguan SEL R-Line Turbo with a January build date, and they know that the initial run of R-Line turbos from October to November, maybe early December, are the ones that are the problem. And it just comes down to VINs. It comes down to the numbers that are on that turbo, right? The serial numbers. And they've pinpointed it. They know exactly what the issue is. I've also been seeing posts from Canada where they're talking to Volkswagen Canada. And I'm surprised that Volkswagen Canada is releasing this information to individual owners. Again, I'm not going to dive into these things because I think it's way too out there. And again, Volkswagen isn't saying anything, and they're not going to publicly say anything right now until they can fully address this issue and be able to sell vehicles without having owners come back a week later or 3 weeks later with a faulty turbo. But there does seem to be some movement, and that's all I want to know. That's all I want to see, that there is movement, that Volkswagen does know this issue, and they're taking steps to remedy all of this. And it seems like we're getting to that point. But I do believe that we'll be waiting 6 months at the earliest, but I also think we'll be waiting until the end of the year for an official release, right? Like if you own an SEL R-Line Turbo right now that doesn't have a faulty turbo, and you bought it in October or November, you might be part of a blanketed recall. And that could come end of the year, that could come in 2027. Who really knows? But it just seems like there is some movement here, and maybe there's going to be a resolution very soon. But up until that point, I'm going to still document what I'm experiencing here with my Volkswagen Tiguan. A 1,000 mile ownership review is going to be coming very soon, probably this week, as I'm about to pass that in the upcoming days. So stay tuned for that. But guys, once again, thanks so much for watching and joining me here on this journey. I know a lot of you are experiencing these same issues. And like I said before, if you want to be proactive, you want to make sure that your vehicle might be okay, or you might be a bit concerned, take a look at that build date. We're going to need that information, at least right now, until Volkswagen officially comes out with a press release as to when the build dates are affected, which ones are going to be a problem. We need to know this right now, so that way, if you're looking at buying an SEL R-Line Turbo or you own one, you're either going to be in the clear, or it's something you might want to check out at your local dealership and go to the service department and see what they tell you. But guys, once again, thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.